All right. Hello, everyone. I just want to invite everybody and welcome you to Anchored Soul's very first virtual Spill the Tea. And basically what's about to happen is we have a collection of people here and we are just gathering our hearts and we're just going to share on different topics, different questions we may have, hoping that it will bring you some kind of value. I am Keisha Alexander. This is my husband, Ahmad Alexander. We have Yumiko, Alyssa, and Sherry Ford. And so we are all here. These are my battle buddies. These are my co-laborers in the field. And we are all here just to bring some value to you guys. And so our topic for tonight is going to be based on the question of how do you respond when someone asks you, how many children do you have? I know I have gotten that question a lot. And everybody on here has gotten that question. And so let's just open it up. We're just having a conversation. Hopefully something here helps you, strengthens you, encourages you. But we're just having a conversation tonight. So Alyssa, how do you respond when someone asks you? Maybe share a little bit about your story and how you respond to this question.
So whenever I was the one who brought up this question, because every single time I am approached, I hesitate because I don't know how to answer, because I don't want to neglect my children that I've lost. I've had 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth between my 2 boys, and I have 1 on the way. And right now, people seem like, "Oh, is this your 3rd?" And I'm like, "Third what? Like, what are you asking?" And I really like, it's not my 3rd pregnancy. No. Is that what you're asking? And this is my 3rd child. Hopefully it's my 3rd child, but it's a weird, I hesitate and I kind of look at them with this like blank look of, yes, it's my 3rd. And then I move on and freak out that I didn't answer it correctly.
Yeah, I think that's a common situation. A lot of people, it's like, this is really awkward right now.
Yeah.
So Sherry, how would you say you respond to it?
My situation is different from each of you because you've been blessed with children either before or after your babies went to heaven. So mine is pretty standard. I mean, it's packaged, but it really is from my heart. And I was even thinking about this earlier today while I was exercising. And I would say 90 to 95% of the time, I say, no, I don't have any children here, but I have a son in heaven. And my answer would be different perhaps if I had other children. I could say 1, 2, but Caleb, was our only baby. So it pretty easily rolls off my lips and out of my heart, that because to say no, I don't know, it just feels weird to say no. So I have to say, not here, but I have a baby in heaven. And then what it has afforded me also is the opportunity to share my faith. I want people to know I'm a believer and that I'm okay, that of course, I don't like it that he's in heaven, but people will often say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and then I find myself consoling them, like, "It's okay. He's perfect. He's whole. He's complete, and no matter how long he had lived here, this is temporary. When I see him again, we will spend eternity together." Yeah. So I answer always that, no, I don't have any children here, but I have a baby in it. Well, actually, not a baby in heaven. He's not a baby in heaven, but he's a young man in glory. So, and I give God praise for that.
Yes. So, Yumiko, have you ever gotten this question, or is there a response you would like to offer as well?
Well, yeah, most of the time when people ask me how many kids I have, just without thinking about it, I usually always say 2, because that's how many children I have here with me. My miscarriage was prior to my oldest living child, so, and I wasn't married, so I just never really bring it up because you don't want to get into the topic. Most people kind of associate the premarital children with shamefulness, so I just never really get into the topic because I don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And before I actually became part of this group, I always would just kind of put it into the back of my mind, and I would think about it. But, people say, oh, well, it's for the best, and, not thinking of what they're saying to you. You're like, oh, wow, well, it's just, you kind of put it on the back burner a little bit, unfortunately. So, yeah, usually I always say I have 2 kids. And I know that in my heart I have 3 kids. I have a baby in heaven, but, people just don't want to get into that subject sometimes. So I always say
Keisha, what about you?
Before, I think that's a good point. There's something from each one of y'all that y'all have said that really stood out to me that I want to make sure I come back on. Because Yumiko, you said something about the premarital and having a baby that was lost beforehand, and how sometimes people can feel the shame with it, and how do you handle it? So that is just something good that, to expose it. It's okay to be vulnerable about those things as well, because all babies are a gift from God, no matter the situation or circumstance. So thank you for sharing that. I feel so honored. Okay, Brendel, what do you say?
Melissa started asking you first. She asked you first. But okay, I'll share. For me, it depends. And I think it depends on who I'm speaking to, and where I feel or know the conversation is going, in my perception, or how I perceive the question is being asked. So typically, for the most part, I will say that we've had 3 boys, because people know the 3 kids that we have here with us, and there are some that know of Titus, our son that's in heaven, and then there are some that do not know. But if the discussion is regarding, oh, are you guys going to have another child, or are you going to try for a little girl, or are you planning on having more kids? And well, you already have 3 boys. Sometimes I may lead with, well, yes, I have 3 boys here, but we've had 4 sons. And so it just depends on who I'm speaking to, whether or not I say that we have 3 sons here and 1 in heaven, or we've had a total of 4 kids. It depends on who I'm speaking to, and where I perceive that conversation has originated and where it's going.
For me, in the very beginning, after we first lost our son, everybody was gonna know we had another baby. Like, I did not, because I feel like my heart's desire was, I did not want his memory to be lost, and I didn't want him to be forgotten. He did happen. He was a child. He was a miracle. And so I didn't want him to be forgotten. And I think there might be a lot of moms who are just recently coming through a loss, and that's their heart's desire. I don't want people to forget my child and to act like they never existed. So I would always say, yes, this was before we actually had our 3rd one. I would always say, yes, we have 3 kids, 1's in heaven. And my kids, you talk about other children, my older 2 children, they would always say, don't forget about Titus, because he impacted them as well. And so I'm with them a lot when we're out. And so they're there to respond as well. And so part of my response now, I think the longer you go, you realize your child's memory is going to be kept in your heart forever, even if other people don't remember. And so I'm not specifically making a point now to say, oh, I have 4 kids. Typically, I do say, yes, I have 4. 1 passed away. But then, like Sister Sherry say, you get and I'm like, I'm good. God has healed me. I've gone through it. Do I miss him? Of course. Do I long to see him, to play with him, wonder about him, have all these thoughts about them? Of course I do. But I'm healed. And so it leads me to a place where I can share my faith with a person and share what actually got me through the situation. So I guess it just depends on, the situation. In the beginning, it was always absolutely, yes, I have 1 that passed away. Now I typically say it, but it's not as forward, if that makes sense. And so this is a question addressing, because there might be some people who are watching who've never gone through a loss, but they have found themselves asking this very question. Why do you think people even ask? Why is it such a common question? Do you think it's inconsiderate? Do you think that people can rephrase things? How should we allow the conversation to come around? Because there are plenty of people who had a loss, suffer with infertility, and that question can be a stinger. How do you think people should address that?
Would you state the question specifically? What question? Like how many children?
So, it's very common for someone to ask you, well, do you have any children? How many children do you have? And it could open up wounds. It could seem insensitive at times. Why do you think people in particular ask that particular question? And if you think it's insensitive, how do you think they can address it or change it? Or what do you think could be done?
No, not at all. I think a lot of times that's just a general question, because I've asked many people, how many children do you have, or do you have any children, is usually how I lead. And sometimes I think it's just as innocent as just getting to know that person, whether it's somebody new to the fellowship where we worship, whether it's a coworker. And I think, most of the time it's just ask innocently as you're trying to make conversation and get to know that person, where there's some kind of common ground, where you just want to, get to know the person. So I don't ever think people mean to be hurtful, or it's just sometimes the follow-up. It's usually not that question. And with me, that question has never bothered me. And I know I tell people I'm wired a little differently, because even right after Caleb went to heaven, I wanted to talk about him. I wanted to tell people, and perhaps it was because he was our only son, but people would say, oh, and I was like, no, I want to tell you what a feisty little man he was. We got to bring him home, but I wanted to talk to him. And so, but I really think that comes out of a living, loving, vital relationship with the Lord, because I tell people often, if my relationship is solid, mine and my husband, when Caleb went to heaven, I just don't know. I know so many people who never seem to rebound. Their joy never seems to be restored after such a great loss. And I know it was just the Lord. And people would ask that question, once they knew that was the child that we waited for 7 years and had him. He was in vitro 6.5 months, with us 6.5 months, never got to come home. And people will often, the next question would often be, well, aren't you angry with God? And I was like, no, he's the reason I'm standing here talking to you. Without him, I would have lost my mind. There would be no sanity, no peace, no restoration of joy, and none of that could have happened apart from an amazingly wonderful relationship with Jesus. And that's not bragging on me. That's making my boast in the Lord. And that situation allowed me to know, after we came through it, Father, there is nothing, no matter how much it shakes our world, that you cannot bring us out of, that you cannot cause us to recover from. And it's like you said, no, it has to do with the fact that, you don't miss your child, you don't love him. Because I'm sure a lot deeper in than you all. Caleb would be 16 years old come he'd be 17 on May 3rd of this year. So it's been a long time. But I tell you, the healing came so much faster than I ever thought it would have. And it was because of the Word of God. It's because of my church family loving on us. I often say, when we walked through the doors that morning after him going to heaven, it was like liquid love. We could just feel it. And I don't want to monopolize the conversation. But that question, back to what you originally asked me, that question, when I ask someone, it's simply just most of the time to make conversation. Yeah. And so where it goes from there is, where it leads. But I was never, ever offended or am never offended, even when it was really raw it didn't, hurt me or offend me for people to ask, because I always wanted to tell them about Caleb. And I still do.
I
still
love
want to tell
that.
people.
You said something that says common ground. That is something that people want to do, and they're trying to build common ground
Yeah.
with the person. And so, Alyssa, what about you?
I absolutely agree that that's exactly what we're trying to establish when you're asking someone those types of questions. Do you have children? How many? How old are they? I think that's exactly, and I love the question that someone proposed to me is your family complete? It's not about, are you going to have more or that, is your family complete? I love that question that someone asked. But I think the point about the common ground is one of the reasons why I want to share that I had losses. It's not for the sympathy. I'm not looking for pity.
Right.
But how many times have we finally opened up and said, oh, I had losses? And they go, me too, And so sometimes I don't want to share for my benefit per se, but I want to have that common ground. And it's amazing how when you're a little bit more vulnerable, that common ground opens up and it gets more common. But how do we share that in a non-pitiful manner? I have no idea.
Yeah.
How do I share that I had 3 pregnancy losses without someone going, oh, because I don't want that response. I'm not seeking pity. I'm not seeking that sympathy. My light went away. But I think it's that common ground that we're seeking whenever we ask these questions. We're looking to find out what we have in common, what can we relate on the same page with.
What about you, Yumiko?
I've never been offended by the question, and I've actually asked people that question before. But I've only shared about loss with like people that I've been really close to, that like were really asking me to like really know what was going on. Because some people just ask just in general, passing, making conversation, and then some people just like really want to know more about you. And I've shared that with some people. I actually had a girlfriend that I talked to about it, and she just lost her first child. And so I feel like that's just one of those things God gives you to share with people. So she felt the need to share that with me because we connect there, because she's had that loss now. And so she just wanted somebody to talk to. How did you get over it? Like, what did you do? What scriptures did you stand on? What did you pray? Like, because she didn't really know exactly how to deal with it. So I feel like that's just, I guess, a nugget that God's given us to be able to share with other people who may experience their loss in the future, if possible.
And something I guess we can take from all of this is that when you have gone through a loss, you really do want to share. So if you're someone who hasn't gone through a loss, it's not that you have to be afraid to ask the question, but be prepared and open for what the response is going to be. I think sometimes when a person is, maybe someone's dealt with infertility or they are have lost recently, maybe it stings a little bit harder. But just from this conversation, just to know that sometimes people really are on your side. And if we are not always on the defensive, maybe we can see that a person really does want to get to know us and care about us and not necessarily trying to hurt us or take us to a bad spot. And so if you are really raw and saying, man, right now is not the time for this question, know that people generally are coming from a good place. They're generally coming from a place, I just want to have common ground with you. I just want to get to know you. I want to build some kind of relationship with you, and not necessarily take you to a bad place. And so that's something that we can keep in our head, I guess, as we go through the days and encounter that question. So you have anything to say?
Absolutely. Might you ask? No, I agree with what everyone has said, and that I do feel that it is a common question, and that it is an opportunity to find common ground, because we typically tend to ask the question of others as well, not just people asking us those questions. I mean, I can remember recently seeing a young lady in Walmart who was pregnant, and just natural tendencies. I say, oh, is that your first child? It's just something that you do to make conversation, to start up a conversation. You know, so I don't, you know, I mean, from a male perspective, you know, I don't take it personal when people ask, you know, well, how many kids do you have? Or, you know, when I tell them that, well, we have 3 boys here, you know, and they ask, you know, well, there's conversation revolving around, well, how many do you plan to have, or how many have you had? And, you know, I can remember just in church this last Sunday, or it may have been 2 Sundays ago, having a conversation with a guy who sat on the same row as we did. And he asked a question about our 3 boys that he saw with us in church. And he was like, oh, that is, you know, it's beautiful. You have 3 beautiful boys. And I'm not sure how the topic came about. But I think I saw an opportunity to share with him. And it was one of those conversations to where I felt that I could be candid and transparent. And so I opened up and shared with him that, you know, yes, you know, we have 3 handsome boys, 3 wonderful, 3 wonderful kids. But I share with him that we've had 4, and one has gone home to be with the Lord. And sure enough, you know, immediately as I finished that sentence, you know, he opened up and he said, oh, he said, you know, he said, I've had a son. What did he say? He said, I've had a son as well. And he's in heaven with the Lord, but that was my only one, you know. And so, you know, had I not at that moment, you know, used that opportunity to share with him, you know, that we've had another son, you know, beyond the 3 that he sees, that conversation I would have never found out that he's had a son that has gone home to be with the Lord. And we exchanged contact information, and we're going to have lunch together soon, just to talk a little bit more. And I feel that it's an opportunity to learn more about him, for him to learn more about me, and for us to develop a stronger bond and get to know each other. And it's an opportunity to, you know, to share with him and see where he is and see how, you know, he's gotten through it. And also to share with him how we've gotten through it and how I've gotten through it from a male perspective, because I do think that people grieve differently. Not to go off on a tangent there or chase this rabbit hole, but you know, I do think people grieve differently. So seeing another male and being able to discuss that with him, you know, I think that was a wonderful opportunity and a door that God opened for us to share.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so I think what'd you say?
I said, that's a fantastic story. That's awesome. I mean, it's wonderful that y'all found that common ground because you were willing to be vulnerable.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the more you grow in Christ, the more you grow in your relationship and your personal strength in the Lord, the more you're willing to be vulnerable and allow him to use you in those moments. And so this has been an amazing conversation. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you, all of y'all who have contributed to the conversation, and all of you who've watched. I hope you've gotten something from it. Leave us a comment, go to our website, shoot us an email, let us know what we can talk about on the next Spill the Tea, how we can be of practical, tangible help, hope, and strength to you. And just to wrap up this conversation, I think we can all take away from here that 1, we all do grieve differently. 2, it's okay to ask the uncomfortable questions. But 3, let's break the stigma. There should not have to be a stigma around whether you've lost a child, had a child. We can be transparent, we can be open, because everybody goes through situations, but we can use our situations for the betterment of the kingdom, to glorify God and to encourage somebody else. So,
Amen.
Y'all, beautiful.
I hope everyone has an amazing night, amazing day. Once again, visit our website, anchoredsoul.org. Drop us a comment. Let us know anything else you would like for us to cover. And thank you. Y'all have a blessed one.